Right. Just want to sort of welcome you all to our info session here about sort of preparing for grad school at MUN. My name is Andrew Kim. I work with the School of Graduate Studies here at Memorial. Been here since 2007. And I'm not sure who else will join us, but I know definitely also in the room is Carol Sullivan from SGS. I'm just going to ask her to sort of introduce herself very briefly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. My name is Carol Sullivan, and I manage the funding and the financial side of things at graduate school at Memorial University. I am here to answer any questions you have today, and I think as we move through the presentation, Andrew will cover off a lot of aspects of the financial piece, but certainly if you have any questions, you can reach out to me anytime. I'll put my email in the chat box just so you have it. Back to you, Andrew.
Great. So the presentation is fairly dense, and so I expect it to take roughly 55 minutes. We'll try to save some time at the end for Q&A. And as I go through this, I'm just going to ask Carol to sort of weigh in if I make any mistakes or if there's some more information that we need to sort of add to beyond what's on the slides. Just some general guidelines for today's talk. Just to minimize background noise, please put your mics on mute. Cameras are optional, but you may use to turn those off to preserve internet bandwidth. If we do have time for Q&A at the end, please keep it as general as possible just to protect your own privacy. And if there's a question or concern that you have that requires us to know your personal information, please email us at sgs@mun.ca and we'll get back to you right away. Just so you know, that email address is monitored 7 days a week. And so if you email, you'll get a response within one business day, but usually within a few hours. And just another reminder, the session today is going to be recorded, just so it's accessible to people who can't make it to the session this afternoon. So here's the agenda for today. We'll cover a little bit about the role of SGS in your student life, talk about some steps as you prepare to start, go over some information about registration and fees, offer some general academic advice, and then some tips for success drawn from the literature and own experience working with graduate students. Oh, and I do tend to talk fairly quickly. So if I am talking too fast for you, please let me know. Please type something in the chat box because I can talk fast sometimes, too fast. As is the case with many research universities in Canada, the grad school is an academic support unit that works with faculties, schools, departments, and individual graduate programs to help you end to end in the graduate student life cycle. So we're involved and have oversight in everything from applications and admissions to records, registration, and overseeing progress, research exams and doctoral defenses, and the administration of student funding. I think we do a fairly good job of this, particularly sort of in the context of the pandemic. We hold weekly meetings with grad officers, and we also hold weekly meetings with graduate schools across Canada, just so that the support that's offered to you is as comprehensive as possible. We also participate in sort of the governance structure of the university through our academic council and executive committee of academic council. For many of you, you would have applied and were admitted through the prospective graduate student webpage. You probably won't need that anymore, but this is the resource that you'll find most useful now as admitted and registered graduate student. And so I've sort of highlighted sort of the three areas that are probably most relevant for you. One of which is the new student page, which you would have been referred to when you were first admitted. The current student page next to that will have most of the information you need in terms of forms and guidelines, information about theses and doctoral defenses. And then we have an additional sort of page that I think will be particularly meaningful if you're starting in the fall 2020 semester, which we created back in March when the pandemic hit and everything went remote. And there's a specific section on that resources page for new graduate students. which applies to everybody, but especially for students in research programs and international graduate students. So if you've, assuming all of you have been admitted, just some sort of immediate sort of steps to consider if you haven't done this already. If you've been conditionally admitted, you won't be able to register online. So whatever conditions were in the conditional admission letter that was emailed to you previously, please send those documents to sgs@mun.ca and we'll fully admit you. And that'll generate a student record, which will enable you to register through self-service. If you haven't done so already, you can submit the accept decline form, but really this is not necessary at this point if you've been fully admitted, because registration will show us your intent that you'll start your program. Just going to try to mute some people here in the middle of this. Great. If you're an international graduate student starting your program remotely, make sure you apply for a study permit through the IRCC website and refer to the SGS resources page for specific guidance about what we require in terms of documentation. Carol talks a lot about this in our online meetings with new graduate students. Think about and develop some kind of budget and use the minimum expense form on our website so you know what costs will be attributed to you as a graduate student. Connect with your supervisor or graduate officer if you have program-specific questions or need academic advice, or just so that they know who you are and that you're preparing to start your program. Just touching base in a general sense, I think is very, very helpful. And then make sure that you access sort of all the online tools available to you at MUN, which includes your IT toolbox, logging the self-service, creating your MUN login through the MUN portal, downloading MUN-specific apps, and also downloading some of the free software available to you as a registered MUN student, which includes the MS Office suite, McAfee antivirus, and SPSS. And then activate and monitor your your at MUN University email account. I know that if you're a newly admitted student or a new student, we would have been emailing through the email account that was listed on your application. But once you're registered, the formal way that university will correspond to you is your university email. So please activate that and monitor it regularly. And this isn't so important now, but it's still relevant. Please update your permanent mailing address in self-service if that's changed since the time you've applied. So one of the things that we suggest newly admitted students to do before the semester starts is read a lot. There's been a lot of correspondence that's been sent to you, starting with your admission letter, but also, on a biweekly basis from our office and also from the units. And I know it can be a little bit overwhelming. You don't have to read it all at once, but the information is being sent to you because they're meaningful. And so please take some time over the next couple of weeks before the semester begins to go through all that content. And the most important sort of content in a general sense for all graduate students are listed here. So the new graduate student page has 12 steps. Some of them are fairly dense steps and some of them are not. Please read through those carefully. Review the SGS resources page about information regarding the fall 2020 semester. Take a look at the university calendar, both the general regulations and the regulations governing your diploma or degree program. Understand what the roles and responsibilities of graduate students are, as well as those of your supervisor if you're in a research program. One thing that's commonly misunderstood is how student status is defined. So at MUN is not driven by course registration. So please take a look at the definition in the calendar. It's also in the guide for new graduate students on step 1. Understand sort of the fees that you're responsible for, both the academic fees or tuition and the ancillary fees. Understand the important dates relevant to you as a university student at MUN, which is in the university diary. If you're a full-time graduate student, you'll be charged either GSU health and dental insurance, if you're a Canadian citizen or permanent resident of Canada, or the foreign health insurance if you're an international graduate student, and the GSU dental insurance in that case. So please take a look at that information. And if you're eligible to opt out, please understand how and when you need to opt out. And both that information is on the GSU website and the Internationalization Office website. And then finally, I think Kumon is very good at offering sort of very comprehensive student services for all grad students across all campuses. So please take a look at those, most of which are listed under Step 11 in the guide for new graduate students. I'm just going to sort of pause here for a second. How's my pace? Am I talking too fast for anyone, or is it unclear?
I think you're doing well, Andrew. I'm monitoring questions in the chat box as you move through, so I think we're doing good.
Yeah, I see that. Thanks for that. The list of comments is scary. So hopefully, I was wondering if I had to go back through all of them. But thanks for addressing those as they come in. These are some important dates for you for the fall 2020 semester. Obviously, it's not the entire semester, but sort of over the next sort of a month and a half as a time horizon. And some of this is, of course, is historical now. So as the first week of August, you had access to the Graduate Commons, which is our online community for graduate students. You can access it through Brightspace, our learning management system, after you register for fall 2020. Registration, as you probably know, opened up on August 3rd. And then on August 17th, earlier this week, on Monday, through the Graduate Commons, we made available MUN 501, which is our asynchronous virtual graduate orientation. And so there are 6 modules there that you can access and review sort of when it's convenient for you. On August 26th, so that's next week, payroll deductions will be available for funded graduate students, for new graduate students who are funded in research programs. On September 8th, as part of MUN 501, we have our synchronous online welcome session for new graduate students. And you were sent an email about this, I think, yesterday. And we have 2 of the identical sessions offered at different times because we understand that people will be calling in from different time zones. Lectures begin formally on the next day on September 9th. And September 9th is also the deadline for fees payment. And so just so you know, fees are always due at the start of the semester. And so that's September 9th in the case for fall 2020. September 23rd is the last day to register for fall 2020. And September 30th is the last day to withdraw or decline your offer of admission, in this case, without incurring liability for tuition fees. All right. So as you prepare to start, we talked about this a little bit earlier. The Grad Commons is our way of trying to connect you all with each other to build a community of grad students as we start and sort of study remotely. So please take a look at that, not just at the resources that are available to you, but also discussion boards, and participate in or create your own sort of discussion threads as on topics that are meaningful for you. To your university email account, you'll be sent a newsletter from SGS on a bi-weekly basis. And that is really sort of a digest of all important things relevant to you as graduate students. It's fairly dense, but again, it's not sent to you every day. And it's meant for you to sort of just capture everything that has gone out involving graduate students in case you might have missed, a Gazette story or a deadline or a scholarship opportunity. If you talk to librarians about research that you do, one of the things that they'll mention is the importance of sort of, passive research or sort of research while sleeping. And so viewed another way, trying to consume information sort of in a proactive way can be challenging and tiresome, but you can do it in a very passive way by doing something as simple as, signing up for Twitter and following sort of the main accounts of the university, which could involve Memorial U or grad studies or our dean's email or dean's Twitter's SGS dean. You can also sign up for the GSU listserv. And if you're an international graduate student, you'll automatically be signed up for the IO listserv. And they'll also reach out to your academic unit about the departmental or program distribution list that you should be part of. That may mean that you have more information, more emails in your inbox than you'd like. But generally speaking, it's good to be informed. You don't have to read all those emails, but at least they're accessible to you if you need to refer back to them later. And I'm not sure if professionally you could ever sort of get away from having a lot of emails in your inbox. I know Carol and I have a lot that we deal with, which is fine. In terms of registration, so the requirements for your diploma or degree are listed on the program of study form that was sent to you with your admission letter. It will be an HTML file, so you may have to open it up in a browser. The same information is also available in the university calendar under diploma or degree regulations. So if you lose that form, don't worry. It's really just a condensed version of what's in the calendar regulations. If you're confident about what course to take, that's great. But otherwise, make sure that you know that you can talk to your supervisor for research programs or your graduate officers for course-based programs if you have any questions about what course you should register for. And when you're thinking about courses to register for the fall semester, we'd encourage you to sort of map that out for the entire duration of your diploma or degree program. So have a general idea about sort of what your requirements are and sort of when you hope to fulfill them across the time that you hope to take to complete your program. I mentioned the registration begins for fall 2020 began on August 3rd. So generally speaking, registration for graduate courses opens up about 4 weeks before the semester begins, right? Generally about. So that's August 3rd, 2020 for fall 2020. And it's always 7 a.m. Newfoundland Labrador time. So we know that might be a little bit inconvenient for some of you who are living on the west coast of Canada. But for the most part, you shouldn't have trouble accessing courses with some exceptions. We know in the Faculty of Education, for example, graduate courses fill up quickly. So you probably do want to wake up early and try to register at exactly 7 a.m. when registration opens for a particular semester. So as I said, registration opens up generally 4 weeks before the semester begins and closes 2 weeks after the start of classes. So it's September 23rd for fall 2020. After that date, it's not possible to register for courses online. You might be able to register through a course change form, but that's only if you've been participating in classes since the start of the semester. And the reason why they won't let you register otherwise late is because you'd be at a disadvantage if you were starting a course so far into the semester. And generally speaking, you can drop course without academic prejudice up to 8 weeks from the start of classes for a particular semester after consulting with the academic unit. So for fall 2020, that's November 8th. So what happens if you drop a course in self-service after the end of the second week of the semester, but before the end of the 8th week of the semester, so September 23rd and November 8th in this particular case, you see a DR appear on your transcript, which signals that you registered for the course, but then you dropped it. And then sort of just some general advice when it comes to registration. Ensure that you plan for and complete all required program courses, and also consider the non-academic requirements for your degree. So we talked about this morning, that for some programs where you have to access personal health information, you need what's called FIA training, which is the Personal Health Information Act. And then also be mindful of non-course requirements for those of you who are in research programs, your comprehensive exam if you're in a PhD program, or your thesis if you're in a research-based master's or PhD. And if you are thinking about doing non-program courses, please consult with SGS or your academic unit first before you do so. There are some implications for doing this, and so you want to be fully informed before you make this decision. When you're registering, some of this might be sort of old news for you now because many of you may have already registered, but make sure you register for graduate registration. This is a non-credit registration that tells us you're actively pursuing your program. So generally speaking, it's your major code plus 9,000. So if you're an engineering graduate student, it's ENGI 9,000. If you're a history graduate student, it's HIST 9,000. With the exception of grad students in the Faculty of Medicine, your grad registration is always MED 9900. Once you register for this grad registration, it automatically rolls every semester until you either complete your program, you withdraw from your program is terminated, or you're granted a leave of absence. So the important thing to keep in mind here, and this is the second last note on this slide, not registering for a course doesn't mean that you've abandoned your program. There's a formal way you'll continue to be registered and charge fees until you formally withdraw or complete, right? And so please don't misunderstand that if you, for example, decide not to take courses in the winter semester, you're no longer a student. That's one assumption that sometimes grad students make because of their experience being an undergraduate student at certain universities. And you'll find detailed information about grad registration under Step 8 in the Guide for New Graduate Students, and a full list of deadlines and dates in the University Diary, a link to which is here and also on the Guide for New Graduate Students. And just a final note, the maximum time allowable to complete your program is 7 years. MUN's rule here is very, very generous, and obviously we don't expect or anticipate most of you to take this long. But the important point here is that you won't run out of time, so please don't worry. In terms of fees, the fees that you're charged are based on the payment plan that you select on the accept decline form when you accept our offer of admission, and there is a default payment plan that's assigned to you in case you don't select one. The payment plan can only be changed in your first semester, so please make sure that you know what plan you're in and to ensure it's the right one for you. And the program fees are charged over the duration of your payment plan, after which you'll be charged continuance fee each semester until you finish. Right? So let's say, for example, a case where you finish your program in 10 semesters under payment plan B, which amortizes your program fees over 9 installments. Then you'll be charged 9 program fees over the course of your first 9 semesters, and then 1 continuance fee in your last semester. Generally speaking, it's a better idea for you to be on payment plan B than payment plan A if you might take more than 6 semesters to complete your program. And then if you're eligible for Plan C, which a few graduate programs are, then financially that's the better option for you. If you are eligible for Plan C, if you're in a full-time student in one of those eligible programs, you're automatically set to that payment plan, unless you decide to change by submitting an accept decline form. And then finally, some programs require special fees. These are listed on the minimum expense form, things like the Master of Applied Science, the MSc in Management, the MOHS program. So just be mindful of that. It's not most of the programs, but some do. And so make sure that you're accounting for that when you budget. And then also should have been sort of, you probably saw this information when you were first applying. The fees also vary by residency. So there's different types of program fees based on if you're a Newfoundland resident, a non-Newfoundland resident but Canadian student, or an international student. And you'll find information about the definition of what an NL resident is on the link here. And then if you finish early, just keep in mind that you may be responsible for the remaining program fees on your payment plan, and you'll be charged then a lump sum payment. So this is an example, a scenario of this that's provided in the new graduate student page. So for example, if you finish your program in 4 semesters under Plan A, then in your final semester, after you finish your program, you'll be charged 2 remaining program fees in a lump sum, right? So the best way of thinking about this is like the principal of your mortgage. No matter how fast or late you pay off your mortgage, you're always responsible for the minimum amount, which is your principal. And that's what your program fee is here. And also keep in mind that for certain programs, if you're a full-time student and finishing on time, the duration might not align perfectly with the payment plan. So for example, MER students can finish in 1 year. MU students can finish in 5 semesters. So in your case, you'll likely, if you finish on time, you'll likely be responsible for remaining installments on your payment plan. So just budget for that accordingly. And also, that's also true for grad diploma programs, which amortizes fees over 9 installments. But if you're a full-time student, you can finish in 2 or 3 semesters. And then so the examples of some of these scenarios are listed under step 9 of the Guide for New Graduate Students. So with respect to fees, make sure you pay fees by the appropriate deadline. There's a few different options which are listed here. And again, the link to this is on the Guide for New Graduate Students. Electronic banking is probably the most affordable way because you're not incurring a cost. But there are multiple methods. But if you don't pay by the deadline for fees payment, which is the start of the semester, then you're charged a late payment fee of $30. It's not substantive, but generally speaking, you don't want to pay those kind of extra fees if you don't have to. And then funded students can sign up for payroll deduction through self-service within the first 2 weeks of classes. And that was the deadline we were referring to a little bit earlier. Just keep in mind that you can't register for graduate courses if you owe money from a previous semester. The 9,000 will roll. The graduate registration will roll every semester, regardless of the status of your student account. But if you owe money from a previous semester or previous semesters, there'll be a financial hold in your account and your record preventing you from registering. So just make sure that your payments are up to date and that you don't owe the university any money. And the recreation fee, that's been suspended for the fall 2020 semester. But if it does become a fee that's charged to you later, you can opt out for this if you meet the eligibility requirements. And information about this is again on the SGS website in the new graduate student page. And for health and dental insurance, if you're a foreign student and you charge foreign health and GSU dental insurance, or if you're a Canadian student and charge the GSU health and dental insurance, you may be able to, you'll be automatically charged if you're a full-time student, but if you meet the eligibility requirements for opting out, for example, you have alternate coverage if you're a Canadian student, or if you are starting your program from outside of Canada, if you're a foreign student, please make sure you opt out by the appropriate deadline. Information about this on the GSU website and the IO website. And then finally, this is similar to what we talked about in the previous slide. Not registering for a course doesn't imply that you've abandoned your program. You'll continue to be registered. Your graduate registration will continue to roll, and you'll be charged until you formally sort of withdraw or complete. And so please be mindful of that. And if you have any questions about this, don't hesitate to sort of reach out by email. So general academic advice. Oh, maybe I should pause there again. Are we doing okay? I know Carol's dealing with a whole bunch of questions and comments in the chat. Zoom has like a thumbs up icon you can use, but okay, good. Just yeah, I need a little bit of validation once in a while. Not often, but just to make sure things are going okay. So some general academic advice for you. If you're a grad student taking courses, you must achieve a grade of B or better to pass your program courses and continue in your program. So a B at MUN, the low range for a B at MUN is 65%. And generally speaking, you can only have one field grade per program. Or there are some allowances, special allowances for certain programs, namely the MBA and the MAC computer engineering program. The simplest way to think about this is, just make sure that you're getting 65 or better in each of your program courses. And if you're taking a course and sort of, you're struggling with it and you're projecting, a lower grade than 65% earlier on because of the assignments that you're doing or the tests that you're taking, make sure you talk to your instructor or grad officer or somebody in SGS, because it might be an opportunity for you to drop the course by the deadline and take it again some other time when you're better prepared for it. The caveat to some of this, the rule about making progress is that early on in the year when the pandemic hit, we did waive the regulations governing terminations because we didn't think it was appropriate for students' programs to end when they were, struggling with circumstances beyond their control. Although there is a rule that says if you fail more than one course in your program is terminated, that isn't being actively applied now because that regulation was waived by Senate with the recommendation of SGS Academic Council. But you don't want to have but you would still have to repeat the course in the future. So you don't want to get a grade of less than 65 in program courses. Courses are required for your degree or diploma. If you're a research student, you have to complete and submit with your supervisor an annual progress report once a year. Typically that happens in spring semester. If you start your program in the fall semester. We've heard from some people, both faculty and grad students, that this looks to be sort of a punitive measure, but it really isn't. It really sort of is an opportunity for you and your supervisor to sort of reflect back on what happened over the past year or past, month or semester, and sort of, use that information and reflection to sort of inform sort of future planning, whether you have to pivot or continue on as you were. It's meant to be of help. So please view it that way. As a tool. Make sure that you complete, as I mentioned before, all non-academic requirements. So that could be the animal care seminar if you're doing research that may involve, the study of live vertebrate animals. The FIA training if you're doing research that connects you with personal health information. Sometimes there's a second language requirement if you are a PhD student in the humanities. And then if you're doing research that may involve you accessing laboratories, there's a safety course that you have to take. So understand what those are and make sure you complete them. And if you have any questions about them, they should be listed on the program of study form that was emailed to you. But if you ever have any questions, feel free to send your supervisor, grad officer, SGS an email. And then also understand, with respect to progress, the formal processes for securing leaves and withdrawals, right? The general regulation, one of the general regulations state that grad students are expected to make progress every semester. Progress is very clearly defined if you're in a course-based program, but less so if you're sort of in a research program. But if there's a point in time where you think you need to take a break, or you need to, or maybe you've made the decision, the absolute decision to withdraw from your program, which is very, very rare, but it still happens, make sure you contact somebody and not just try to do it on your own. Or assume it's done because it's something you need to do or want to do right away. And then also sort of, please know and respect all academic and financial deadlines. We know this is not easy to do, especially lots of things going on. But if you don't know the deadline, just email somebody, your grad officer, supervisor, somebody in SGS, and we'll let you know. But it's important to adhere to these as much as possible, because failing to do so limits sort of, what we can do to help. If you're thinking about making changes to your program, not unlike many other universities, we have a large number of forms that you can use to make these kind of adjustments. So we'll change the program form whenever you need to make changes to the program requirements, your supervisors, or your research topic. If you want to change routes, for example, you want to go from an all-course route to a thesis route, master's degree, then there's a change of route form. If you want to change something significant about your program of study, let's say you want to go from a master's to a PhD, then there's a program of study form, which you don't have access to. And then there's a change of status form if you want to change from part-time to full-time status or vice versa. Again, that's not determined by the number of courses you register for. And so all of these forms, plus others, with the exception of the program of study form, can be found on the SGS current student page under forms for students. And I talked about student status already, so I'll skip that now. I mentioned earlier about reading the calendar. It's not a pleasurable read. I mean, I'll be honest with you, but it's really important to know some of that, to have some of that information, so that if you need it later on in your program, you're aware of where to look. It doesn't mean you have to memorize it, but to know that the resources is there. And some of the things that the calendar speaks to, the general regulation speaks to, the grounds for termination, when that regulation applied, which isn't the case now, how one transfers credits from another university to MUN if you have grad courses completed but didn't earn a grad degree or diploma elsewhere, what happens when regulations change. I mean, the general rule here is that if regulations change, you can either go with the new regulations or stick to the ones that existed when you were first admitted and enrolled. Appeals procedures, how grad courses and students are assessed, how one defers examinations, how you can request an incomplete grade, how you can request a reread of a final paper or exam, and principles regarding academic behavior and academic misconduct. And then in addition to the general regulation, there are regulations specific to your diploma or degree programs. Some are very, very, for some degree diploma regulations, there's not a lot there. And for others, it's just as dense as degree regulations, but they're equally important. So please take a look at that. And then also, I think one of the things that MUN is really good at, I think I've mentioned this before, is that, we strive to sort of offer services that are as comprehensive as possible for you at no cost to you. And so in terms of sort of academic supports, there's a lot available to you all remotely. So we have services available for grad students through the Writing Center. Our EDGE program offers over 100 different sort of workshops, many of which are academic support workshops, available throughout the academic year online. MUN Library has really important sort of resources, tools, and guides for you, especially if you're in a research program, or even if you're doing grad courses, you'll have to do some kind of research to complete course requirements. Our Student Wellness and Counseling Center offers study skills work clinics and groups, all virtually. And we have academic accommodations, guidelines, and supports through our London Center. We offer, in partnership with the Writing Center, a thesis writing group, both two types, one that happens on evenings, Newfoundland time, but also another more intensive one that happens in the spring semester. And I think that's cluing up right now this week for spring 2020. And then we have, as I mentioned, free software for you, including Office 365 and SPSS that you could use to support and carry out your coursework or research. So the next few slides here speak to what the literature says is important for you to consider to do well in grad school as a graduate student. I think that the first and most important thing to acknowledge is that grad school is naturally challenging for people, right? So if you sense it's difficult, that's okay. Don't worry. It's supposed to be difficult. It's also one of the reasons why not many people have grad degrees. In Canada, the last census said that 5% of all Canadians had master's degrees, and less than 1% have had PhDs. And one of the reasons why it's why it's challenging. Not everybody can do it, and clearly the university thought that you were talented and skilled enough to undertake and complete your programs. So if you ever feel at some point that it's tough, it's okay. It's supposed to be tough in some ways, but also many people have acknowledged that you're more than able to do these programs and be successful. If you're an international graduate student, especially if you're studying in Canada, coming to Canada from another place, there are a number of sort of other stressors that you may encounter, things like new cultural norms, homesickness, adapting to new academic environments, and dealing with different expectations, and maybe dealing with language barriers. But another important thing to remember is that being busy, having a high workload is not necessarily a bad thing. Right? The literature says that having multiple roles are important for increased life satisfaction and well-being. And generally speaking, the most satisfied graduate students are the ones that are most challenged. But the caveat here is they have to be equally supported. So what's important here to remember is that the challenges for grad school are inherent, and you can deal with them, but you may not be able to deal with them all the time on your own. And so make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people and supports to take on those challenges as you see them in your program. When you're dealing with challenges or problems, it's important to take a problem-solving approach towards addressing them, especially academic problems in graduate school. And there's literature about this. There's in terms of a sliding scale. Some people can take sort of an avoidant or emotional strategy for dealing with academic problems, and I'm actually probably guilty of that quite often when I was a student and also at work sometimes. But taking a problem-focused approach is really sort of key to addressing root problems and issues. And you can do that by consulting with your instructor, support staff in your unit or in SGS, peers, right, other grad students in your programs or at MUN. Looking at alternatives, seeking out alternatives, and taking action. The literature speaks extensively to what's called social integration as being an important part of successful student life. Most of this comes from undergrad literature on undergraduate students, but there's a natural application to grad school and grad programs. Social supports are really, really important for your own well-being and has an indirect impact on good academic outcomes. Peer groups specifically have played an important role in serving as a stress buffer, and also is a way for you to sort of crowdsource solutions to academic problems that you might be facing. And especially if you're in a research program, grad supervisors play the most important role in your development as a grad student. And effective mentoring contributes immensely to both improved well-beings and professional outcomes. So at MUN, we offer, I think we're the only university in Canada that does this. We offer a deliberate online training program for faculty members to train them to be supervisors, good supervisors. We're doing as much as we can to support faculty development in this space. And we know many of our faculty members have been recognized internationally for their excellence in mentoring. But the important point here for you as new graduate students is to understand that they play an important role, know that they can help you whenever you need help, and so you make sure you communicate with them regularly in terms of sort of, how you're doing and what your needs are. There's some literature specifically regarding master's students that talk about sort of, what's important for them to be successful. And some of the literature that came out a few years ago speaks to what's called intent to persist. What this paper by Cohen said is that if you sort of know why you're pursuing your program and know what you hope to do after you complete your degree, there's a greater likelihood that you'll complete your program and be successful in your degree. The key thing to remember here is think about what you want to do after your program now. I know it may seem like it's a bit too soon, but it really is never too soon. And what the literature says that has a direct impact on your persistence and completion. Another way you can do this is to be involved in professional activities and departmental activities while you're a graduate student. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, different opportunities you have to do that a little bit later. Specifically for PhD students, and generally speaking, there are 3 different sort of phases to your program. Your initial year, your sort of the integration years, and then sort of candidacy after you finish your candidacy or your candidate exam or comprehensive exam, as it's called at MUN. And generally speaking, the most challenging time is early on in your program, and you see the highest dropout rates for U.S. PhD students in the U.S. Is in that sort of first year. And generally speaking, you can apply that through our own data. We know that that's also the most difficult time for all graduate students. But it does get better as you sort of acclimatize and adjust to the new academic environment. Some ways to mitigate this, if you're a PhD student, participate in as many orientation activities as you can. Seek out faculty and peer support, and participate in departmental activities and discussions. Develop a real clear study plan to completion, and actively sort of revisit this with your supervisor and committee members. And as was the case with master's students, think about what you want to do next now. Even in a general sense, it'll help you keep focused and sort of motivate you to complete at your timeline. And we talked about this before, and this is sort of not literature-based, just drawing from sort of, everything that we've seen and read and experienced in supporting graduate students. It's really important for you to understand important literature as uninteresting as a lot of it is, admittedly, like, reading the calendar is not a super fun sort of way to spend an afternoon, but it's really important. So read as much of that as you can. Be informed, so you can make informed decisions later as you need to. Attend as many of these SGS departmental orientations, webinars, info sessions, and meetings as you can. Even sort of, participating in a passive way by just listening while you're doing other work, I think could be helpful to you. Realize that, there's a common goal that's shared between both the university and you. Both the university and you want you to complete on time, right? So complete your programs and complete on time. I think in some rare cases, and this is not exclusive to MUN, but in some rare cases, things can feel a little bit adversarial, but it's not that way at all. We both want the same things, for you to have a good, positive experience as a graduate student, complete on time. But the responsibility for that is shared across, you, your supervisor, your academic unit, the grad school, and other support units at the university. to do this well, to improve the conditions for success, prepare as much as you can before you start, because it's a lot harder to read and prepare while you're sort of in the midst of doing a lot of courses or your research. And this is something that I tell my own students when I teach. Try your best to not say, no one ever told me. It's true that we have an obligation to inform you as much as we can, but the information is sort of out there in the public domain, accessible through meetings like this. And so please try to access that information as much as possible on your own. And always ask us if you are ever uncertain. Create a study plan, regardless of what program you're in, grad diploma, course-based master's, PhD. Have a study plan that maps out sort of the start and end to your program, and sort of is broken down into sort of clear milestones that could be as simple as what you're doing, what course you're doing each semester. Probably a little bit more complicated if you're doing a research program. But that gives you sort of a good measuring stick with which you can sort of determine or assess how much progress you're making and whether it's sort of satisfactory to you, and if you have to make adjustments or pivot or do something a little bit differently. One of our very good friends in the grad school is Dr. Leonard Lai, who's a retired professor in the Faculty of Engineering and Applied Science. And he used to do a presentation for grad students called Learning How to Learn. And so there's extensive literature on how one can improve learning and knowledge retention. And a lot of that speaks to the importance of what's called distributed practice. So very simply put, learning a little bit over a long period. And the opposite of that is called mass practice or cramming. And so there's a very good YouTube video that I will post a link to in public chat that it's about 45 minutes, but I guarantee it'll have a tremendous impact on how you approach learning and studying. And for many of you, because grad students are generally speaking the highest achieving students in their class, what you may find when you watch this video is that your own study methods are validated because you may have been doing this all along. Also, consider how the courses you take and the research that you do will be integrated with your daily life routines and responsibilities, i.e., work and family responsibilities. And think about what supports you will need to be successful. I can tell you through our own sort of institutional data, we know that the vast majority of grad students who enroll in our programs finish, right? So some may not finish on the time that they would like, some may take a little bit longer, but the vast majority finish. Our withdrawal rate for graduate students, i.e. the number of people who decide not to continue their program, is about 3 or 4%, right? So generally speaking, if you start the program, you will finish, especially if you continue with your program after your first semester / first year. But it doesn't mean that the program will always be easy, but it can be made easy so that if you plan ahead and understand how it'll coexist with other things that you have going on in your life, namely family obligations and responsibilities and work responsibilities if you're working part or full time. And then some other tips for success that draws on, that sort of, draws from the literature and own experience. Meet regularly with your supervisor and committee members. If you're in a research program, submit that annual progress report on time and use it as a tool, not a punitive measure, right? And use it to sort of, check in on your study plan and make adjustments as you need to. Be engaged socially and academically. It's not just about doing courses or engaging in research. Being connected to a community of learners and practitioners is really, really critical for you to be successful, not just to be successful in your program, but also to build the inevitable social capital that'll have payoffs for you later on in your future professional lives. Address issues promptly, whether it has to do with courses or research. Connect with your instructors or supervisors if you're encountering issues. Seek out peer supports, whether it's people in your classes, other grad students in your programs, or the various student unions, societies, and understand, the university procedures for conflict resolution. So it's not common, but there are cases where people might not get along. For example, a student and supervisor, and there is a formal process by which those types of conflicts are resolved. And then have a plan for post graduation. Get involved as much as you can. The GSU has ratified, I think, somewhere around 40, 45 different clubs and societies that you can be involved in virtually. We offer through our EDGE program, as I mentioned, over 100 different workshops and programs, free of charge, all online, that help you develop core competencies that our academic council has identified as being important for you to be successful both in your time as a graduate student, but also sort of in your professional life. And attend virtual conferences and participate in departmental seminars as much as possible. And then Carol will mention this to you at any meeting that we have with her. Apply for scholarships as much as you can. Carol, I'm not going to do a good job of explaining this better. Well, you want to chime in here?
I could make you do it and I could grade you on it.
I don't know if I get 65.
Okay, maybe. So you just want me to talk a little bit about scholarships?
Sure.
Yeah, so when you're accepted to a grad program, you may or may not have received funding upon admission, but I always encourage students that even if you have funding when you've arrived, to always apply for scholarships throughout your program. The School of Graduate Studies has a really good online scholarship database. Andrew has it posted here in the last point on the slide. I'd encourage you to go in there and have a look around and see what scholarship opportunities may become available throughout the academic year. Make sure you keep a close contact with your admin person for your program, because they will be the person who sends out the information to the students. Okay, so when the scholarship is up for when the call for the applications is out there. And I'd encourage you to apply for a scholarship, even if you're not sure if you're eligible. If you don't think you're eligible, but you may be, apply anyway. Let the committee decide if you're not eligible, okay? And not only is there, of course, there's always the financial benefit of a scholarship, but there's also the process of going through that in terms of updating your CV. Your CV will always be updated if you're constantly applying for scholarships. And also the skill of writing a cover letter or an application for funding is a really important skill set to have. Serve you well in your graduate program and serve you well in life in general. So it'll help you refine that skill set as well. So I encourage you to apply for everything you think you're eligible for. Okay. And I guess that's the best piece of advice for awards and scholarships. So I'm going to toss it back to Andrew.
Great. So a couple weeks ago, I mentioned this in our meeting this morning. I put out a tweet asking MUN grad students to share advice that they have for new graduate students starting their program. And so that's the tweet. And this is sort of a summary of what they said. And you'll see lots of parallels with what we talked about from the literature and also sort of our own sort of institutional experience. Really important to connect with others, not just a supervisor, but also other graduate students, staff members, both within and outside of your department. Think about sort of look at knowledge and the importance of knowledge outside of your discipline as well as inside. So read as much as you can and participate as much as you can, both within and outside of your disciplines. Try to make progress as much as you can. Understand that you're not going to be productive equally every day, but a little bit of progress every day adds up to a lot over time. Make sure you have a good relationship with your supervisor. Communicate with them directly, and also try to figure out sort of what their expectations sort of and work styles are through other other graduate students they might supervise. Never feel like you're doing something wrong by asking a question. There are no wrong questions, and you're not expected to know everything. These are not none of these are my comments or advice. These are coming from grad students that are enrolled in program that you're enrolling in as well. Be flexible and willing to adjust your plans. And if you're passionate about something different than what you're studying now, talk to your supervisor about it. Familiarize yourself with library services, APA formatting, reference management software. And I saw a comment in the public chat about the library services, so that's good that you're thinking about that. Back up your files and data regularly, both in the cloud and on different hard drives. Set goals for yourself, both short and long term. Breathe, take regular breaks, and go outside often. Realize that you're already good enough, right? Many people at the university reviewed your applications and thought that you were an excellent candidate for the programs that you're ultimately enrolling in. I can tell you grad admissions at MUN is very competitive. So, for example, in the US, the acceptance rate for master's degrees is 50%. At MUN is less than 25%. And so you've been selected among a very competitive group of applicants. And so please acknowledge that and understand that you're already good enough now and more than able to complete your programs. And most importantly, especially as we deal with sort of a COVID context, make sure you're kind to yourself and kind to others. It can be stressful, but never take it out on yourself. It's never the case that you're not doing enough. Finally, I mentioned this in other meetings that we've had with new graduate students. There are many people at the university who care about you and your success. You can reach out to any of us whenever you need help. So there's your graduate students union. There's contacts within the graduate school, the graduate officers, the Indigenous Students Resource Center, if you're an Indigenous graduate student, and then the Internationalization Office if you're an international graduate student. If you want to contact me specifically, these are all the different ways you can do so, by email, by phone if you're in Canada, or if you may incur long distance charges, WebEx. This is my WebEx room. If you go in and just press a button, I'll know you're there and I'll join you to chat virtually. And then I think Carol Sullivan may have posted her email several times in public chat already. So you know her email address as well. We're fairly responsive. I think if you need help and email us, we'll get back to you within 1 business day, and usually often sooner than that. So don't hesitate to reach out. And then finally, just a quick reminder about the Grad Commons. Please engage in discussions and use the resources. Please take a look at the modules for MUN 501 within the Grad Commons. And then this is, of course, one of a number of workshops and info sessions and meetings that we're having with new graduate students, including the big one that we have, the welcome session on September 8th. So for the full schedule and to register for any of those, any and all sessions, please go to this link here. So I'm going to stop recording now